Limit your questions to like one, maybe two, but one at a time, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be here at this rate. We're going to be here till 2 in the morning. So let's try to keep it a little bit concise if we can. So, okay. We will now hear our Career and Tech Ed Center budget and staffing update.
Right, so I'm going to hand it over to Meredith Wadasek in just a second. I just wanted to share that this update is being presented to the board as a result of several questions from our June board meeting associated with the budget and how that supports CTE programming, some of the staffing questions that were coming to the board, and just any budget allocation associated with some of the corrective measures that we took associated with the staffing. So I'll hand it over to Meredith and Dr. Indelicato.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal and Ms. Saavedra and board members. I will try to keep it concise, but understand that I'm happy to answer any question, especially as we go through when we get moving along. So, Carrie, you're good? I'm going to start off with our CTE mission statement, and I'll give you just a quick background. Our CTE mission statement was developed in 2014 by parents, teachers, students, and industry work partners that came to the table to help us really look at what is it that's going to guide the work of CTE. That was done alongside of a lot of the work that was happening by the board to develop the board mission and visions, and then goals, and eventually the profile of a graduate. So I want to speak just for a quick second about that alignment for you so that there is some understanding of how that guides our work. When we read what this mission statement has to talk to us about, we really look at every student is a key thing that stands out. Real world practices, and so what does that look like in a classroom, and what does that look like for all students to have something that is real world? And then next, most importantly, evolving. So the word evolving skill sets, attitudes, and behaviors. And I would say one of the most challenging things about CTE is that it is ever-changing. As workforce and industry changes, so too does CTE, and that does create an opportunity for unrest from time to time as the state is frequently changing and we are frequently updating. So we are very glad that this mission statement that was developed by that group is very much in line with our profile of a graduate, and it very much supports what the district stands for. Tonight, we're going to talk about 4 key things, and as Ms. Saavedra pointed out, these are some of the response questions that have come out. We want to be able to provide you with a little bit of an update. I will tell you that you've received some information that are a lot of numbers. Our numbers fluctuate almost minute by minute as we are working through student schedules right now. That is an ongoing piece. And so the data that you have received in writing and the data that we'll discuss today will likely be slightly different tomorrow. Good. All right, we'll look at student participation definition and examples, and that is because we want to talk about and we want to demonstrate how important it is to allow students to not only be students that are coherent sequence completers, but also explorers and honoring different students and where they are. We'll talk about our projected student enrollment by program area because that projected enrollment impacts that 21-22 staffing allocations. And then we'll look at our budget allocations. And everything I want to point out is anticipated as we will flex and adjust as necessary. So to get us started, the participation definitions came down to us from the state. This was as a result of Perkins 5 Reauthorization Act that came from the federal government. One of the things that came out of that act was the recognition that states were reporting information differently and inconsistently from state to state. And so states were challenged to come up with a method of coding students and recognizing some standards about what it means to continue through programs. In particular, in our situation, that is directly related to career and technical education. A Code 4 is a student that does not sit in a CTE classroom. So, Ms. Malone, I heard you say you have an elementary student, so I've got a 5th grader and a high school kiddo. So my 5th grader, if he were starting 6th grade and we did not offer a CTE class in 6th grade, he would be coded a 4. And we start coding those students when they enter 6th grade because that is the first opportunity that we have as a district to offer coursework for students. That is a change that has happened over the past 2 years from the state. We've been allowed to offer courses in the middle school, but we have not been allowed to receive funding. So that was a change that came about 2 years ago. A student is a Code 5 once they have completed a CTE course for not more than 2 credits. And this is a big piece of the vocabulary that the state is using. The student completes the course. In past years, we would code students based on, I'm sitting in a room right now. So we would say, we would come to the board somewhere in October and November and say, hey, we have this many students. We no longer code students until they complete a course. And so that is a change. Some courses are worth half a credit, meaning it's a 1-semester class. It can be a 1-credit class, a 2-credit class. And in this district, we don't currently offer 3-credit classes as of yet. In the future, we may do that as our programs grow. A Code E is a student who is exploring. So they're moving between programs and they're moving between pathways. They have completed 2 or more CTE courses, but those courses are not in the same state-identified pathway. And so the state has identified what a pathway looks like inside of a program area, and I know that's a lot of depth, if you will, but I'll use STEM as a good example because we have a lot of confusion around that from time to time. As a district in CTE, we offer a STEM program area with 2 pathways, computer science and engineering. So a student does not move between engineering courses and computer science courses and end up as a concentrator or a completer. If they wanted to dabble in both, they would possibly be an E, and I'll represent that in a minute. Our concentrators are Code 6 students. Our concentrators are students who have completed, and here's some new vocabulary, they must pass and earn credit for at least 2 or more of those courses for at least 2 or more credits. So Code 6 is the first time you see that a student had to actually pass the class. If a student takes a full credit course, passes in the fall, and is unsuccessful in passing in the spring, and that may leave them with only 1.5 credits because they took the first year, they would not move to a Code 6 until they can pass the right number of credits. And then finally, a Code 7 is a student who has actually completed an entire pathway of study inside of one of our program areas. The state considers a completer a student that has earned 3 or more, taken 3 or more courses and earned 4 or more credits. The way that that can happen is because some of our classes are 2-credit classes. And I'll give you an example of our auto tech. So a student who takes auto tech 1, that's a one course for 2 credits. The same thing is true about culinary arts. That is 1 class for 2 credits. And so you have to have at least 3 classes for 4 or more credits. And just to give you a couple of examples, and I want to really bring to the forefront that one is not more important than the other. There is different funding, but to be a completer or a concentrator is not more important or more valuable than being an explorer. And that is really important for us to recognize because that's where we figure out who our individual students are and what they need. And so under no circumstances is the goal that we are trying to pigeonhole all kids into just one thing. I start something and I never change my mind. So I'm going to use Ryan Wasick as a good example since he's a senior this year at Austin. Ryan has dabbled in engineering, he has dabbled in business, and he has dabbled in ag from that perspective. So he technically has finished his engineering pathway, but he also has coursework into other program areas, and we want students to explore that. So just quickly, if I look at my example of a student that could be sitting at Dulles High School, and you can actually take out any of these examples across the top, we would highly likely find any student that would fall into any of these categories at any of our schools. But a Dulles High School student that may have been with us in middle school or may have come to us from another school district has a touch systems and dollars and cents course at their middle school level in 8th grade. So they're coded a 5 because they've completed the courses. In 9th grade, they try Principles of Health Science. When they complete that course, they are now an explorer because touch system data entries and Principles of Health do not fall in the same pathway. So this child is exploring something, trying to decide, do I go back to be the business teacher? Dr. Gilliam and I both had to teach business, got to teach business. So then they want to try floral design. They entered floral design to get their fine art credit. There's nothing wrong with that, but the student gets into that class and loves their teacher. What happens? That student can then decide to take Principles of Ag, and so you can see that they've touched 3 different program areas, and then move into livestock production. The student does not become a completer because they don't actually meet the definition in a particular pathway, in a singular pathway, I should say, but they've been coded moving throughout that entire system. The same is true, and I won't go by each one of these individually, but in the Marshall example, we have a student that completes, and they can complete as early as a junior year in some cases. In some of our middle schools, kids can start the fundamentals of computer science. At our middle school course level, those are not universal course selection, although I'm very excited to say that we are expanding fundamentals of computer science in our middle schools, and so highly likely that you will start to see some completers in that pathway a little bit earlier. Once a student reaches a code E or 6 or 7, they do not go backwards, and that's what we're trying to show you in this example. So even though the student is not in a course at their senior year, they're still a 7. They're still a completer. In my Willow Ridge example, the student has explored many different courses. The student gets to look at principles of law, computer science, human services, ag science, principles of applied engineering. Again, absolutely perfectly acceptable. And if you think Ryan standing next to me, who towers over me, principles of business, principles of ag, and principles of engineering, that is my son standing there. So. In our Hightower example, I wanted to point out to you that you will hear that JROTC sits inside of career and technical education in our school district. That is common across school districts because of the college, career, and military readiness connections and evaluations. However, JROTC does not generate weighted funding. And while a student would move through a program and complete an endorsement is not the same thing as a CTE pathway. And so in this example, I wanted to point out to you that the reason the student is coded as a 5 is not because they are in JROTC. It is because they completed that Principles of Business course. So students that enter JROTC, we want them to stay in that program just as much as we want them to stay in any other program, whether it's band or dance or choir, orchestra, CTE. What does all of that mean with relationship to staffing? What that means with relationship to staffing is the program areas play a big role in how we staff. If a student like Ryan moves from engineering to business to ag, Ryan is not necessarily matriculating through. So how do I plan forward for, is he going to be in ag? Is he going to be in the business information class the next year? And so it is not as simple as staffing for someone that holds a science certification that can move and switch and teach biology and teach physical science or some other course. Our teachers are very specialized. So when I become certified to teach business, I am limited to teaching only those business courses. There are very few opportunities for CTE teachers to move throughout program areas, although it is very confusing for campus principals. HR works very closely with us to evaluate what is called the staffing assignment chart from the state. Because it looks like I can go teach many classes, but there's a lot of fine print that says, but the teacher actually has to hold 3 years of industry experience in law or 3 years of industry experience in marketing. That is not true for every area in CTE, but for a lot of them. Our goal is always to offer as many students access as possible. That doesn't mean we can always make that happen. And I'll speak to the numbers of enrollment in just a second when we flip to the next screen. But we have made a lot of progress in this district as far as universal course selection over the past years at the high school level of being able to offer those courses at all of our high school campuses. I'm super excited this year in that because we've worked so closely with campuses, and yes, there are some drawbacks when we're sharing teachers, but because we've been able to share teachers, I'll use Clements as a good example. Clements High School is offering principles of human services, fundamentals of computer science, principles of law. We have not been able to do that in the past. And so they have enough students to create a section, and we want to honor that where possible. So our implications of doing that are that we do have many shared teachers in CTE. We've been offering distance learning for 6 years, and I want to define distance learning for the group as opposed to virtual learning. And I know I don't want anybody to be confused with what that looks like from when somebody's going home on COVID and what that means. When we talk about distance learning, students may be sitting at Austin High School in a room with an adult who is their facilitator, but their teacher may be sitting at Clements High School. The teacher at Clements High School is the official teacher of record, delivering content to them at Austin. The biggest difference is that they actually have an adult facilitator in the room with them. And so it is not like I'm sitting at home and I get to log on at my own free will. And so that is where distance learning is slightly different. I will tell you that our teachers come back on extended work calendar on Monday, and we have training for 8 days prior to when they come back for the rest of the teachers. And for every teacher that is facilitating distance learning, meaning I'm the receiving teacher or I'm delivering it, they will have identified professional learning. And I know that's a big question. How do I do that in my classroom? I can't promise you that it's never a brand new teacher, although we try really hard not to have it be a brand new teacher on the delivering content end. So, influences that impacted this year, as opposed to previous years, is that we actually had multiple middle school schedule options. That created an issue where we looked at how do you share teachers. I want to expand fundamentals of computer science, but I only have a need for one section or two sections at this campus and one section or two sections at Campus B. If Campus A and Campus B aren't on the same schedule, I can't share a teacher between them. So that did present us with a few more opportunities and challenges to grow. And then when I speak to the 3 high school schedules, we have the block schedule, we have the traditional schedule, and we have Reese. And Reese operates on a slightly different schedule. I will tell you that Reese's schedule probably changed the least, and it is able to accommodate students from both block and traditionally scheduled campuses. But all of those things combined created some opportunity for differences this year. I'm not going to stand here and read numbers to you, but I do want to speak to staffing adjustments. In June, we answered some questions, and we really took a look at what are we doing from a staffing perspective, and can we make things better? Can we do anything better? Our process started in February with campus principals. We met with them in February, we met with them in March. We were on a slightly adjusted schedule this year because our course selection would typically end in March, and then counselors would have a period called cleanup period during the month of March. So we would be ready to roll in mid-April with this is where we think CTE staffing is going to be. That got pushed back this year because we had so many students at home that didn't participate online in a timely fashion. And so we could not begin that role really until the beginning of May. And so it has felt very rushed to us and to campuses alike. It's also felt very rushed, and I want to call out for HR because they meet with us all the time. Hey, where are we on vacancies and how can we support? And so it's just created a little bit of a crunch. In May, you'll notice that we were down on the number of teachers that were going to be single campus. We have been able to increase that. We have been able to reduce the multi-campus teacher no travel, and I want to define that for the group. That a multi-campus teacher no travel is my example of the Clements teacher who is delivering to Austin High School. They're delivering via distance learning, but they are not being required to get in a car and drive from point A to point B. We then have multi-campus with travel. That is, I am delivering face-to-face at more than one campus. I will also tell you there are some teachers in the multi-campus with travel who are moving from one campus to another and may also be doing a section of distance learning. So I don't want to mislead anybody. I don't want you to think that that means I'm not doing, a teacher may not be doing both. The block scheduled worked in our favor this year because in some of those splits, anytime we ask a teacher to travel, we reimburse their travel expenses from one campus to the next. That is something that has always been done. It's just part of the district, and we make sure that they get that reimbursed. On block scheduling, we have worked really hard to split those teachers with only those 3 campuses, and we've been able to do A day and B day. That means that we did not lose an instructional period to driving because I just happened to go to one campus on A day, and I happened to go to the second campus on B day. So that has been a big benefit for us in that perspective. We really looked at that distance learning. We continued to work with campus leaders and their associate principals of how could we reduce. And so I'm happy to tell you that as of the end of June, we've been able to reduce to 45 sections of distance learning. I will put the caveat out there that our goal is always to have certified instructors. And so in the event that we have any vacancies, and I know HR spoke to, it's unrealistic to think that everything would be filled on the first day, but we would still want to help campuses support if we can get a certified teacher via distance learning. We may ask for some of that if we're not able to fill every position. Facilitated support assignments, this is something that the principals really asked for when we met with them. Hey, I've got these distance learning, but who's my facilitating teacher? Who's standing in that classroom with them? I can't pull a science teacher. I can't pull anyone else. So what we worked to do is we had 2 teaching positions that we had what we call frozen, meaning we didn't have a need in that program area for those teachers. And so we were able to take a position and we were able to split it into 2 aid positions to support our campuses and ensure that they have classroom coverage. So they're not relying on pulling someone else out. So that's why you see such a drastic increase from 18 to 30. And then coaching and other, I wanted this to be out there so that you understand that just because my title says CTE teacher doesn't mean that I'm actually teaching all day CTE. We have right now 48 sections of instruction happening from a CTE teacher that is not in CTE. That's very standard. Dr. Gilliam, I think you were cheerleading sponsor. At some point, I was the dance team sponsor, coach, while I was also a business teacher. And so that is common that we share teachers across. They may be doing things like AVID, technology integration champion. Things like that. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, and non-pathway enrollment. And so I want to connect the pieces to the staffing in this for you. And I'm not going to read numbers, although I am going to explain what the asterisk means for you. While we want students to matriculate through a program because their knowledge base increases, right? It isn't about getting to a code 7. It is about if I have a student that wants to become certified in veterinary medical assistant, they have got to have scaffolding from that principles of ag class, livestock, small animal, equine, all the way up to their advanced animal or vet med course. So there is a scaffolding that happens. What I want to point out here is that this is our first year for advanced animal science. And so that number looks really low if you look at that year 4 course up there. And you would also notice that we have a lot of teachers that are doing distance learning for that class, because 60 doesn't equal a full section of 20 at all 11 campuses. But we do have students that are ready to get to that advanced animal course. And so we feel strongly that we need to go ahead and offer that opportunity for them. And in this year, that looks like a lot of distance learning. We hope to see that grow. And the other thing I want to point out just in these course numbers is we would not assume that the number sitting in year 1 this year is going to move to year 2. So I don't want you to look at this and go, okay, well, I could expect what is my return rate on year 1 to year 2. We call that continuation rate, because there's nothing in this data that tells you how many are freshmen, sophomores, or juniors that are sitting in each of those courses. So if I put Ryan's picture up here for you, Ryan took Principles of Business as a junior. He's now going to take Automotive 1 because he has room in his schedule. So true explorer, even though he is also a completer in his engineering program pathway. He happened to take enough courses in middle school that he has the room in his schedule to allow for that. So don't read into the numbers and come back next year and think, Meredith, you went from 457 to whatever. ACA stands for Academy. I wanted to be able to point out for you that these numbers on this screen are current as of last Wednesday. I don't want anybody to hold a campus accountable at this point because they are working very diligently to get those numbers inside of the system to ensure that we were able to report to you on a data set. This is straight out of a Skyward report pulled on July 14th. And so we'll continue to update that. Education and training has an asterisk in year 2 because the year 2 course in education and training and human services is the exact same course that is identified by the state in a pathway. And so how do I tell you which students are doing education and training versus human services? At this point, I can't. I cannot tell you until they break out to year 3 of where they will finish and where they will go. That's just another good example of how students are allowed to move through. We have some middle school courses. You'll notice at the bottom, Investigating Careers stands by itself. That is our only course offered at the middle school that we still do not receive weighted funding from the state on. And then this just gives you a look of where we are on our current teachers. And so that's been a big question. I will tell you that these are the positions that are sitting out there right now. That does not mean that every one of these positions has been filled. At this point, we continue to work through that process with campuses. It's important for me to call this out because I want you to understand that we recognize the disparity. So if you look at the column all the way to the right, and if you were to ask for that same number for a science teacher or an English teacher or a math teacher, you're going to see something very different. So highly likely that you would be looking at an English 1 teacher sitting somewhere around 170 to 1. We recognize that. We understand it. We understand that as you compare these numbers, and I call out JROTC because we report it in here as well, when you're looking at a ratio of 28 to 1 and 46 to 1, the question absolutely comes up from a funding and a budgeting perspective. Are we utilizing the things in the best manner possible? In some of these cases, these are new programs, and they're starting. And so, yes, you are going to see low numbers. It is going to take us several years to build that up to where we get to. I flipped to the next slide just so everybody's aware. I'm on information technology. That is a significantly low number right now. While there are 2 teachers that are identified for information technology, and probably my IT friends are over there going, oh my gosh, we don't have students. You're right. We do not have a ton of students entering our information technology program. So what are we doing with 2 teachers sitting there? We are continuing to work with campuses on how do we best utilize that staff. That's important to let you know because as we start to make some of those adjustments and movements, it is likely that when we get to our August audit with campuses, this will not be a 28 to 1 ratio because we will have figured out a better utilization for one of those teachers. So we continue to monitor that. We have core teachers that are calculated under CTE. At Reese, we offer math, science, English, and social studies because students are there for 3 periods during the day to fix our scheduling and our busing. And so while those teachers are considered on our CTE teacher roster, we do not calculate them into the ratio because they're serving the same students that are sitting in another program area. And how does that impact budgeting? So I'm going to start and I'm going to talk about two different budgeting perspectives. First, I'm going to speak to the 199 budget allocation. And 199 is the piece that comes out of the adopted budget that you all look to. This year, we're expecting about $1.55 million. That is about the same place that we were last year. The largest chunk of that money will go to our instructional resources. And instructional resources for CTE don't always mean a textbook. Sometimes that's a software program that we have to purchase from that perspective. At $547,000 out of that $1.55 million, that is the portion of the instructional resources for CTE that is not covered through our instructional materials allotment. CTE we don't know what courses we're offering every time they come out with IMA. So Proc 2017 that we worked through, some of these courses weren't even there in 2017 because the state has made changes since then. And so we ensure that our priority is instructional materials, instructional resources for students. The next piece to that is you'll see our student certifications. We as a district continue to fund our student certification. That sits right around $350,000. In the past, in COVID year, we had a bunch of students that couldn't take it. We have maintained the $350,000 from a budgeting perspective. And important for the group to know that any student that could not take their certification during COVID because they were at home and weren't able to come in, they still can come back and take that certification. So we still fund accordingly from that perspective. We are unique in comparison to other departments in that we do budget for travel up front. The majority of what that travel expenditure is associated with relates to our career and technical student organizations. So you'll hear about our students that go to DECA. They've made it to International Career and Development Conference. Anytime students make it past the district level and require advancement, we fund their trips, and that is their registration and their transportation costs and any hotel costs. And then, of course, the teachers that go with them. Other travel that is included in there is if we are doing field trips for any student reasons, if we're taking classes on field trips, if we're looking at that. Any reimbursements that we have for teachers or staff that are traveling between campus will come out of that portion. Professional learning is, in CTE, we don't have an expert on every program area. I would have to almost triple my staff to ensure that I could do that. I am not your health science expert. So while I can give you CTE professional learning and pedagogy professional learning, I cannot give you health science specific professional learning. And so we do allocate money. We stand behind asking teachers to investigate opportunities to go out once every 3 years to get some type of industry training. Not every teacher takes us up on that, but we do encourage them to try to do that, and there is a bring back piece. The other piece to professional learning is our teachers that are really working hard to pass their industry certifications that need additional support. There is a lot of dollar money associated with this professional learning for those teachers in this year, and it changes every year as our needs change. Program budgets, I'll come back to. That's the blue arrow, and that's what we're going to dig deep into. The next piece is curricular contracts. We do have some curricular contracts that stand in place. Project Lead the Way is a program that we are associated with for our engineering curriculum. That is an example of one of our curricular contracts. We have an entrepreneurship curricular contract. We have some very cool Z-Space three-dimensional computers, 3D computers. That is one of our curricular contracts that support multiple program areas. Program budgets are those things that are specific to this is a class. This is what it looks like. And so I want to speak to that a little bit more in-depthly for you. And on this slide, it's roughly 15% of the total $1.55 million. I do want to let you know that that doesn't mean that we just take that dollar and call teachers and say, here's your money, use it how you want. It is definitely money that is allocated in alignment with the written curriculum. So in June, our teachers were on extended professional learning. They worked through budgeting. So they looked at what is it that I'm going to do that first 9 weeks, and they've already submitted their budget requests. The why behind that is I need to know what it is that you need in your classroom when we get started. We don't want to wait till we see them in August to make those moves, because then they're 6 weeks behind on buying anything. And as we know right now in distribution and logistics, everything is even slower. A good example in this situation, and I get asked the question frequently, is this based on the number of students enrolled in the program? And the answer is no, it is not. If you went all the way back to the slides of projected enrollment and you added up which programs have the most students, that will not come out to equal this breakdown on this chart. And the reason being is it costs more money to run some classes than it does others. So I'm going to speak in our health science program as an example. If you looked at our year 2 and year 1 enrollment in health science, that is principles of health science and medical terminology. It does not take me a lot of money to teach medical terminology. That is very, very textbook heavy, and kids are learning 400 and something words, right, at a time. However, when I move into anatomy and physiology and they are dissecting minks, that costs me a lot of money. And so we would never budget in accordance with the number of kids sitting in the classroom, because I would not be able to allow kids to have those hands-on experiences that they needed to have in the other classes. And so this breakdown is based on where we are on the curriculum and what we anticipate the needed expenditure for. There is a portion of this that teachers will flex. And so if we know that in engineering, teachers have to do a structural analysis stress test, and that is what they're measuring. I don't tell all of my engineering teachers, you're going to build a bridge, you're going to build a bridge, you're going to build a bridge. This teacher may want to do a structural analysis on a bridge, but this one may want to do it on a chair. So I don't drive or tell the teachers, you're only getting these supplies. In that regard, teachers have latitude to say, okay, I would like to order balsa wood, but I would like to order popsicles, sticks. So from that flexibility, a portion of this 15% is left up to the discretion of the teachers. However, it needs to be in alignment with what the written curriculum is. 199 as opposed to Perkins Grant. Perkins Grant, and if you go back and you look in your long paper and you'll start to notice, wait a minute, those dollar figures are going down. And the answer is yes, the dollar figure is going down from year to year from Perkins. The state has a formula that funds how we get the Perkins money. We do anticipate that this $572,000 we will get a reallocation at some point. Typically, we normally get our reallocation somewhere around November. Last year, we did not get that reallocation, and I say last school year, but we're still in the Perkins budget year. We did not get that reallocation until February. So you will see that we do not plan for that money here until we are given that reallocation. Because the way Perkins Grant works, we don't get to supplant, unlike when the state gave us the ESSER money and did supplant it. Anything that we buy on 199 in this year, I cannot buy out of Perkins Grant unless I go for 3 years without funding it. And so if I try to move money like that, that is called supplanting. And so we really looked at how do we use our Perkins money to support programs and to support programmatic growth in the best way possible that will not tie my hands of if I need to update the MIG welder this year, I might have grant money, but next year I might not, and I spent $199, I could never take it back out of grant money, right? Unless I waited 3 years without buying it. And so we do have a lot of payroll associated with our Perkins Grant. We have a significant amount of the money set aside for payroll. If you compare the data from the 1920 to the projected 21-22, you will notice it went up. there are a couple of key places that it went up. Number one, all the staff got a raise, and so we do have to account for that, regardless of position. But number two, we put more money into our counselor liaison program. We have had much success at the high school level in having a counselor liaison at every high school level. Our intention is to dig down to the middle school level and have an identified CTE counselor liaison. And so our payroll number went up because we will be adding 15 middle school counselor liaisons. That is a supplemental pay that an identified counselor receives for attending and learning about CTE outside of their contracted time. So they really become the CTE counselor champion on their campus to help us ensure that we're educating everyone. Also inside of there is supplemental pay for any teachers who are writing curriculum. So while it is payroll for people, it is also for teachers inside of that. We do allocate a small amount of money in professional and contracted services, supplies and materials, and other operating costs, largely in part because we just don't know what might happen, and we don't want to tie up so much money, but we need it there in case we have an emergency that happens. Other operating costs might look like if, let's take advanced animal science since it's our first year. Gosh, that's our first year. We haven't paid for anything out of 199 funds yet. So if I need to buy something for advanced animal science, I'm going to come buy it out of Perkins Grant first because it wouldn't be supplanting. So I need some supplies and material or other operating costs for the thought or idea that I may need to buy for a brand new course. That's why you'll see it there. If you look at the numbers in your packet, you'll notice in 1920, once we got that reauthorization, we put all of that money into computers and technology. We upgraded 10 computer labs for Project Lead the Way. Depending on what amount of money that comes in our Perkins Grant, we might look at doing something like that. We just don't know. So where does that take us and what are our next steps? First of all, I will tell you that CTE, as we started out by saying, is the ever-changing world. It is never going to be a dull moment in CTE, and there is always room to do something new, different, unique, and better. And so we constantly are looking for opportunities to make improvements and to respond. And I don't want to say react, but sometimes it is a response. It is a response to what changes we have. So I have worked very closely. Dr. Limley has been fabulous to work with, and Dr. Indelicato. We worked closely over the past 2.5, 3 months to identify how do we let other leaders in the district grow in their knowledge about CTE. And so that really looks like how are we kind of transferring some ownership back to the campus level, and Dr. Gilliam to speak to, now that we have universal course selection, what does that look like for my individual campus, and how do I do this a little bit differently? So our focus in this upcoming school year is really using our counselor liaison program. We started our CTE Campus Champions last year, and we will continue to grow that. That is the associate principal who will meet with us monthly to learn what are the nuances, what are the intricacies, and then principals will be looped in, and we will meet with them quarterly to review their campus information, their campus data, and to make plans for how do we do this better from staffing. Is it possible for us to do predictive staffing? And so one of the pieces that we've put in place is, I will call it an internal audit, if you will. We will take a deep dive look, and the we being Dr. Limley will work with the campus principals and the campus champions, and I to look at what is your enrollment? Are the right kids in the right classes? Have we given them the right opportunities? Have we missed anybody? And how do we take those numbers and predict what you're going to need for the following year? What is that outcome look like? And so we've agreed that we would do an audit in September and again in January. The reason in January is because we switch courses, and we want to make sure that kids are in the right place. The backside to that audit is also to ensure that the teachers are certified for what they are teaching. So that concludes the presentation, and I'll be happy to take questions at this point.
Thank you, Meredith. That was an excellent presentation. You answered a lot of questions for me, and I appreciate some of the examples especially using your own child. So I have a comment or two, but I'll wait to. No, it's okay. Go ahead, Ms. Hannon.
Okay, thank you very much for the information. I think CTE is such an important program, and I know I've been requested to ask one question, but I have more. I'm going to work backwards with I appreciate that you're trying to build capacity by training campus leaders and building that capacity for a counselor on a middle school staff to, advocate for the program. I think that's a great step in promoting this program. Can I ask, who is typically the appraiser for these? Is it especially the teachers that travel? Who are the appraisers for these teachers?
That's a very good question. When a teacher splits campuses and split travels, the campus that has the most number of sections is their appraising campus. However, we ask that all campuses work collaboratively on that. I do not know how that has worked for everybody in the past. From a perspective of, I don't supervise principals to know, hey, Dr. I, are we getting together to look at this particular teacher from that perspective?
But do we know that everyone has an appraiser identified?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone has an appraiser.
Thank you. My other question, excuse me. I just want to make sure, because I'm hearing that an explorer and a completer has equal, value, and I'm glad to understand that. But I also heard you say, for students who really have a specific goal, they need to matriculate through their pathway. And so I'm going to ask this question in regard to career readiness, as far as our state indicator. What qualifies a child to be career ready based on these codes?
So it's very interesting. Nothing that we've talked about here today is on our state CCMR from a CTE perspective. It is their industry certification attainment.
Okay, but they would have to they would have to go through their pathway to get there.
To an industry
Okay,
certification.
so in that aspect, the completer, is that what they were called? The
Completer is when they get all the way to the end. I want to be cautious because there are programs where industry certifications get interjected at year 2, year 3, year 4.
Okay.
And I'm going to speak to business because your course sequence is a Principles of Business class. Your second course is Business Information Management, which for all of us, you learn Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, and you learn how to do email. So students have the opportunity to take 3 industry certifications in that year 2 course. So it's not always only in the year 4 course, but for about 80% of the classes, it is in the year 4 or the end of the pathway. So an explorer, and I'm going to use your verbiage for just a minute, value, right? All students have equal value in that we want all students to do what they need to do. I will speak to the money for just a minute for Brian's perspective. There is a different dollar amount that comes when a student reaches a 6 or a 7 and is enrolled in that year 3 or year 4 course. Not only do we get weighted funding, but we also get what's called advanced funding. And so there is a dollar figure associated with moving kids up to the 6 or the 7. That doesn't mean that the kid is any less valuable, right? The kid that wants to be the explorer, there's a reason that that kid needs to be the explorer, right? And that kid may just be, I don't know, I mean, Ryan doesn't have a clue. If you would have asked him in 5th grade, he would have told you, I'm going to Rice to be an engineer. He has no desire to do that today, even though he's finished an engineering pathway. Had he not done this in Fort Bend ISD, I'd probably be paying a real heavy bill at Rice University in 24 months, right? So amen. Thank goodness he hasn't, and thank goodness he's figured that out. So from a value perspective.
Right. And lots of us, even at, age like mine, we're still exploring, right? And so that's okay. So, but along those lines, especially thinking about funding, and I'm very big on student engagement, do we have any metric or mechanism in place where we are, trying to understand why kids stop at code 5? Like, are we, is there have we looked at, is there a correlation between the type of teacher they have? They have a distance learning? I mean, is there anything like that we're looking at?
I will tell you that there is no good data right now. I'm not going to pretend to stand up here and tell you that we've got really good data. We are required, as part of CTE administration, to do a student survey. And we have probably about 3,000 student survey responses from last year. So we do collect some information. Jennifer Chadwick and I work very closely together and have identified that is one of our key opportunities for improvement with our counseling. Where does that sit? Who gathers that data, number one, and number two, who even is looking at what the student selected as a program pathway, and are we making sure that they know they can do that? So Jennifer Chadwick and I have a lot of conversation ongoing about what can we do to support differently. I'm not going to tell you.
And I don't know, Ms. Saavedra, if there's any way that we could look at the data from the student engagement survey and disaggregate, looking at, specific, not just our schools, but CTE programs to see how their numbers fell. I don't know if that's a possibility, but that might be helpful to the CTE team.
I know we received that student engagement data as raw data, so there may be, if they're coded, then there's a capability for us to disaggregate some of that engagement data and get some information on our CTE kids.
And I can work with SIS. They're coded all inside the system at this point.
Because I know Ms. James had also asked the question about how it's different now. A child can't take a certain course because they have to go through the prerequisite courses to get to the more challenging courses. And I'm wondering if we're losing some of our kids because year one, I don't know. I just think that looking at some data would be interesting to see how can we help our kids. Anyway, thank you very much for the information. I appreciate it.
Ms. Malone?
First of all, I want to tell you thank you. I know I've asked a lot of questions in the last few months, and so I really appreciate all of your hard work that's gone into this, and also a lot of the progress that I believe has been made, and hats off. Thank you very much. Actually, Ms. Hannon, where you were going is essentially where I'm going as well. I'm really curious on two things. Number one, the counselor liaison position and getting kids enlightened and enrolled into CTE courses and the benefits there are. I understand there's a $4,000 stipend per counselor, correct?
It depends on how many we end up with. We allocate a certain amount of money, so it's set aside at $3,500.
Okay.
That is for 11 high school plus a Reese campus, and then 15 middle schools. We do, from that perspective, looking at is it 4,000, 3,500, we buffer whatever that comes out to be, but that is an allocation that they have.
And the 15 middle schools, that's all new, 100% new, or did we have any last year or prior to?
We did not have middle schools paid under a supplemental fee last year from the perspective of were they counselor liaisons or CTE counselor liaisons. We invited middle school counselors to participate and learn alongside of, but they did not receive supplemental pay and they did not attend regular monthly meetings.
Okay, I guess I'm just curious on how many, the middle school counselor participants that participated in the program previously, if they had a difference in numbers for the kids in their zone participating in CTE programs in comparison to those who did not participate at all.
So this past school year, 2021, was the first time middle school counselors were brought into the mix at all, so we would have to watch that data next year. The interesting thing is, and we can get this data for you if you'd like to see it, in 1920 was our first year that we did counselor liaisons at the high school level. We did not have a counselor participate from every campus. And there is data to show the pro and the con to that. So I can certainly bring that out, get that to you if
so
you'd
then
like
we
to
would be able to support it. And then financially, I would presume that we would be able to support that cost because then we would get an increase in the weighted average of students because these students come with more money. All right. So with that said, the big thing I've don't understand and would love a little more detail on is the prerequisites. So and this is why I say I don't understand, the CCMR outcomes bonus. If I gather this right, it's $5,000 for every single economically disadvantaged child, $3,000 for non, and $2,000 for special ed.
I'm going to
If
look
they-
that way. We'll have to get that to you.
And if they receive certification. So I would think we would want every child to have access for certification on two folds. One, it would benefit the district because we would get an increase in funds and bonus that would come back to us to where we can put in our programs. And then I think it's only 55% has to go into the program.
55% of what CTE generates has to be spent in direct expenditures on CTE.
But to top that, the whole point of really everything we're doing with educating the kids is so that they can participate in a productive way to society, right? And get a job, if you will. So let's say we didn't have the same barriers as the other districts in Texas, because I don't believe that every district has the same prerequisite barriers, and we were able to remove some of those. I think we would be able to get an increase in funding, one, and then two, we would enable our students to have certifications so that they can go into the job market. As you mentioned, some kids could get a certificate at junior level in high school. So let's say junior, senior, or while they're in college, and be able to help pay their way or, proceed and progress in their career that they've chosen.
So let's talk to the certification. If I'm misunderstanding your question, please correct me. But the question is, do we really have to move students from class 1, 2, 3, 4 to get them ready, right? Or can we let more students drop into class 3 and sit for that certification? So could we just say, no prerequisites, not on every class because there are some state mandated prerequisites. However, how do I get the student ready for the advanced animal science or the veterinary medical applications? Well, to get to the vet med certification, you have to have documented so many hours in certain skill sets. You don't get that in course 4. You got that by creating a portfolio over the course of being enrolled in what the state has said makes a programmatic system of getting you that knowledge. And so to answer the question, can districts decide, I'm only going to offer the year 3 and the year 4 courses that count for advanced funding? Absolutely, this district could say, we're never offering the principal's class, the level 1 or the level 2. We're going to offer every level 3 and every level 4 class because that is a numbers game, and we could generate additional money as a district. Campuses and districts can decide to do that. The question becomes is that what is right for students from a knowledge perspective? And so if I think about, I'm going to use calculus as an example. If a child drops into calculus but never had algebra and never had algebra 2.
I get where you're going with this. I think that example makes clear sense. However, from what I'm understanding, which we can take this offline this week or so forth, it wouldn't be something as clear cut like that. And perhaps again, I don't know what the prerequisites are for every single one, but I wonder if there are instances where maybe it's not as necessary as going from algebra to geometry to calculus. But nonetheless, I really do appreciate all of your hard work in this, and thank you. And I love the piece of getting the principals engaged on campus and giving them some ownership back with the program and working with you all. That's huge. So thank you.
Ms. Williams, you have a question?
I'll be quick because I know everyone is tired. My only question is, which middle school will be offering the investigation class? I think that's what you called it. You stated it was 8 schools.
No, ma'am. At this point in time, all middle schools today are slated to offer the investigating careers class. Again, we'll see what happens when it all breaks out, but all middle schools are slated to offer that. 8 campuses are where we'll be offering fundamentals of computer science.
On the middle school, correct or no?
Fundamentals of computer science is being offered in 8 middle schools for next year. All middle schools.
Okay. So which 8 schools would have that class is my question.
I don't want to misquote, so I'll be happy to look that up for you.
Okay, thank you.
So, again, thank you. And I do appreciate your comment, Meredith, about explorers. 'Cause that was one of the things that I was thinking of, last month or whenever that was, when, we were getting a lot of questions about the ag program and whatnot. And I was starting to think that maybe because we had to have these kids go all the way to Code 7, that we were kind of maybe cutting back on some of the offerings. And, I think that, as a student-centered organization that we say we are, I think we should provide as many choices, kind of like was what Ms. Hannon said, so that kids can explore and try to figure out what they want to do. So I really do think that that's a critical piece. And when you're talking about prerequisites, you're not talking about prerequisites for the intro classes, right? You're talking about.
Correct.
Okay. And could you repeat what you said again? I know you're not your calculus example, but you said that districts can offer only 3, level 3 and 4 classes to get kids that certificate?
No, the level 3 and the level 4, what the state identifies as advanced CTE courses, does generate advanced funding for enrollment.
Okay.
And so it doesn't, just because it's a level 3, doesn't dictate that that's where the certification is aligned from that perspective. But some school districts will, you've got everything across the board, right? We're going to only offer level 3 and level 4, but we're going to offer 2 level 3s and 2 level 4s, and we'll build the content in to move them through. And that level, you still have to have 4 credits and 3 or more courses. So just offering 1 level 3 and 1 level 4 doesn't get you there from that perspective. So.
Okay, I think I grabbed that. All right, well, thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Day?
So just one question. Actually, I hear, I'm hesitate to ask you at this, in the public meeting, but maybe you can give me an answer after the words, after the meeting. So I hear a lot of comments saying there's a lot of changes regarding to the prerequisite. And then some of the students, because of that, the teachers or the students, they are losing the interest in certain field, especially I think computer science. So I just, if you have a comments for that right now, that'd be great. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Yes, the state did make significant changes in 2019 to these pathways. And so as a response to what the state has come out and said, we did work. So the work that happened back starting when we knew that this was coming down from the state, we started in July. We had teacher feedback loops of what does this look like? What do you want these pathways to be? What is the right thing? And sometimes we pick things that may or may not be the best thing long-term, right? We may have to flex and change. We then moved that through a process of getting principal feedback. We got other coordinator feedback in academies. Then that goes through, at the time it was called academic advisory committees, to look at what those pathways were. Then we took that information to the executive team in November, and then finally into a board memo in December for the board consideration. And it wasn't a board vote. That's just what the state said. We were just communicating that these are our pathways. From time to time, we look at, so back to Ms. Hannon, you had asked, how do you evaluate programs? What happens if the programs don't generate interest? And so I'm going to use human services as a good example. The state has made significant changes in what human services is. I took home economics in Quail Valley Junior High in 7th grade, and my teacher still taught here for us until has been retired a year. So I took home economics. We learned to cook, we learned to sew, we learned to do buttons, we learned to do a budget. That is not at all what is offered by this state at all in our human services programs. So you are correct. It is not what everybody signed up for. It is not exactly where everybody wants to be. So we do have to do a continuous cycle of improvement and look at what our enrollment is. I'll use computer science to speak to that. Computer science has a task force work group of teachers that worked very diligently in April and May and June, and they have a proposal that they will be making to their peers August 2nd, whatever that Monday is. They will be proposing a new pathway. So this initiates at the teacher level. We will gain all of the teacher feedback, pros, cons, I love it, I don't like it, on computer science, and then we will move that pathway recommendation through the exact same process that is identified. It goes to principals for feedback, and then it works its way all the way up to executive team. Are we going to make those changes or not make those changes?
So I guess your answer is the current situation is state mandate, the change from the state mandate regarding to the pathway.
Right, the state came out and showed us what the pathways, here are what your pathway sequences are. We worked through an entire process to identify what pathways we would offer.
I do understand that. So for the students, they don't have to necessarily follow the pathway, right? When they choose the classes, they don't have to, they can still choose computer science if they are not in one particular pathway.
So if they chose a computer science pathway in order to become a completer,
No, they don't choose computer science.
they just want to
pathway.
take it as,
They don't want to take it, but as my understanding, I may understand it wrong, those students still have to take a prerequisite in order for them to take higher level classes, even though they already have the knowledge. Is that the current situation?
not exactly. In computer science, we did a 2-year implementation plan, and we can provide that to you all in writing that shows how the students, hey, and the reason being we did the 2-year implementation plan for computer science, they haven't been part of CTE forever. The state made that change in 2018 to move computer science over to the CTE world. They eliminated technology applications, duplicative courses on our course, what's called our CO22 table. So they deleted it. So that was a change that students they couldn't make any decisions. So we as a district decided that we would do a 2-year implementation that meant kids could drop into whatever that looks like. In moving forward with the recommendation that's coming out of this teacher work group, the teacher work group would identify, and they've done a phenomenal job, hey, this would be an entry point for this type of student. This would be an entry point for this type of student. And so the entry points, and that may be a little bit, Ms. Malone, what you might want to see, right? Where is the entry point for this particular student? I can tell you the computer science teachers have done a great job of making a presentation. Now, they haven't given it to their peers, so I would respectfully request that I let them present that first before I start presenting that bit.
Okay. So if you can provide a little bit something in written, if you have a flow chart or something,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ms. Hannon?
On the topic of computer science, I know that House Bill 3 said that we could get funding at 7th grade for computer science. Is that something, I know your teachers are looking at a new sequence, but is that something that we'll ever entertain so that,
Right.
more students can be explorers when they get to high school? They could actually dive into another path?
So if I could take it outside of the question of computer science, we may receive direction from a new superintendent from this board that says, we want to explore all different types of options at 7th grade. So it is not limited to just computer science. We currently offer 1 course, 2 courses, they're 0.5 credit, at the 7th grade level for weighted funding. So I'll speak to how some school districts are doing this, right? Some school districts have gone to 8-period days in both middle school and high school, block scheduling, and said every student will complete a CTE pathway that starts in 7th grade all the way through. What they've done is they've guaranteed their district weighted funding 7th grade through 12th grade by every single child, and P.S., they're offering 3 and 4 of those level 3 and 4 courses, so now they're getting that additional money and additional certifications. So those are truly district-driven decisions, right? If this group said, Meredith, we want you to investigate, we can't roll that out for this year. We probably really can't even roll it out for 22, 23, and the why behind that is what does it cost and what is the infrastructure? So at the end of the summary in the worksheet, you'll notice that I called out that really looking at what our space is at every campus is critical, because back in 09 and 10, when campuses had to RIF teachers, a lot of what went was CTE. There was no expectation that campuses kept CTE. Well, the minute you pulled all these CTE teachers out of here, campuses repurposed their CTE space. So if you looked at me today and said, what can you teach in 7th grade and get weighted funding for us? What program could you offer 7th grade through 12th grade and do a good job, right, of what it is? I could not answer that question for you because I know this shop got completely repurposed. I have 3 campuses right now asking me to remove every ounce of equipment. Well, if I remove that equipment because you want to turn that room into a storage, one, am I going to sell the equipment? I will never be able to fund putting it back in, and I would never
So
get that room
Meredith,
back.
the answer to the question is really that we are exploring the fact that we would go back and look at offering additional 7th grade classes for CTE and build out pathways possibly going forward.
Sure.
Is that
We
your?
are not currently investigating that in that context. The reason we are not investigating adding and moving down to 7th grade is we need to get what we're doing right now done well. We need to understand, do we want to drive pathways? If we don't want to drive that pathway discussion, then doing it at 7th grade is not going to do anything other than add money to the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is a route that we want
I'm not saying that that's right. I'm asking for you to answer the question succinctly about, her question was, are we exploring or do we have classes at 7th grade that generate funding for CTE?
we have 2 classes at 7th grade that generate funding.
Thank you. And so I guess for the minutes, maybe, I'm going to say, is this a possibility that, let's say a year out at the next CTE program update, that as part of that we, like you sparked my interest. Like, what are the districts doing that? I'm just saying, could we have that as part of the update for CTE next time to say, I know you got a lot on your plate, but looking at that, how does that look different, and how might that be an asset to our kids getting to start at 7th grade rather than 8th grade, and only at 8th grade they're starting with very minimal opportunities?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
I just have a quick statement, real quick. This is when I spoke of HB 3. The board was statutorily responsible for that class that Trustee Hannon and Trustee Rose and myself sat in. Had we sat down and developed a plan for CTE, we wouldn't be asking the administration. We are the ones in charge of governance. It was becoming upon us to set the bar, and the bar would have been to start in 7th grade. So we don't have to go hand in hand to the administration, asking them to do this. We are going to have to amend our plan to see what we want as the board, and then tell the administration what we're looking for. Remember, it's on us, y'all. The law stated we were to come up with the plan, not the administration. And for us, it was vice versa. So I just had that statement to make, no question.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, So we are going to move into closed session. We will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, for the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subjects or matters authorized by law. Section 551.074, personnel matters. 551.0821, personally identifiable information about a public school student. The current time is 10:06, and we are now convened in closed session. Okay. Доброе утро, which means good morning in Russian. The time is 12:04 a.m., and we are now reconvened in open session. We have action items from closed session. Does anyone want to share a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Trustees appoint Stephanie Tolbert to the position of Director of Talent Operations and Total Rewards.
I second.
Do we have discussion? If not, please vote. I can't see it in it.
And I'm no.
Okay. The motion carries 6-1. Do we have any other motions?
Yes, Mr. Rosenthal, I move that the Board of Trustees appoint Shanae Young to the position of Principal of Arizona Fleming Elementary School.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
I'm a yes.
Okay, the motion carries 7-0. Do we have others?
I move that the Board of Trustees accept the hearing officer's recommendation concerning Level 3 FNG student grievance appeal of TG.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
I'm a no.
Motion carries 6-1. Do we have others? Guess I have the last one. I move that the Board of Trustees accept the hearing officer's recommendation concerning the Level 3 FNG grievance appeal of Larry George.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Ms. Williams?
I'm a no.
Motion carries 6-1. Okay, I believe it's now time for the activity report. Yes. Dr. Gilliam? Activity report, there you go.
Good morning. Board Members District Activities Report. TASB Summer Leadership Institute, 2 special called meetings for board team training, meeting to discuss tax swaps, meeting to discuss AP Science Labs, meeting to discuss fine arts, Bond Oversight Committee meeting, Telfair Town Hall meeting, regular business meeting, Policy Committee meeting, and the regular board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Gilliam. Okay, we are now ready to discuss our consent agendas. Are there any items that anyone wants to pull? Ms. Day?
Mr. Rosenthal, I need to pull 11C 1A.
11C1A. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Rosenthal, I need to pull 11D1.
Okay. Any others? Okay. So, we need a motion for the
I'm
consent
sorry.
agenda.
I need to pull 11B. Consider
11,
approval of purchase of after-school enrichment.
11B.
Is that 11B? Yeah.
No,
11C,
11C1B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Rosenthal, could you please repeat which?
We are pulling 11C1A, 11C1B, and D1.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda in its entirety with the exception of 11C1A, 11C1B, and 11D1 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Hannon, motion by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Ms. Williams?
I'm a yes.
Okay. The motion to approve the consent agenda minus C1A, C1B, and D1 is approved. Okay, so now we need a motion for consent agenda 11C1A.
Mr. President, I move to approve consent agenda 11C1A as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Ms. Hannon. Do we have discussion? Ms. Day, this was yours. Would you like to start?
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal, and thank you for everyone, and good morning. I'll keep this short. I don't really have a discussion, I just more have a comment. So I've been working, a couple of us been working with Ms. Salvanger and the team to review the vendor list. If you compare the vendor list tonight's board meeting book and to the June 14th, it was initially in June 14th, you will see there's a difference. So in this board book, we have vendor list with descriptions of the modules actually the district is purchasing and the scope of use. I really appreciate, I know the team put into a lot of work to make this happen in just the past few days. I really, really appreciate this because I do believe this practice will help us to understand what we are purchasing and what we are bringing to our classroom to help our student of learning. I also understand the district will provide a list of other resources we are using to the community and for the community to review. So I really, I just wanna say thank you and to everyone, and that's really what I have.
Do we have any other discussion? Thank you, Ms. Day. Thank you for you and Ms. Malone for working on this. Seeing no more discussion, please vote. Ms. Williams?
I'm a yes.
Okay, the motion carries 7-0. We will now need a motion for 11C1B.
Mr. Rosenthal, I move to approve consent agenda 11C1B as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Ms. Hannon. Danetta, this is one you want to pull. Would you like to lead the discussion, please?
Yes, I have some questions. I'm concerned about the age of this RFP. It appears that some of these vendors have been since 2019. I don't see anything that's recent where we looked for new vendors to help with our after-school program. I also see that if students are going to partake in these after-school programs, they are for a cost. I have a question as to what are we doing for students who doesn't have the resources to participate in after-school programs when we talk about out-of-school time enrichment?
We have our Director of Extended Learning, Kelly Keegan, that's here that can answer some of those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, in response to the questions regarding cost, we do have reduced pricing that we do offer. We are also working to have some grants implemented at campuses, as well as free events that our department offers throughout the year. I'm sorry?
You're working on that.
For this,
Right?
I'm sorry? For this current
I was
RFP,
asking about.
I'm sorry, Ms. Williams, go ahead.
No, I want you to go ahead because you can teach me something here. You go ahead.
I was just, so for this current RFP, there should be six vendors that we're looking to award.
Right. And my concern was when we look at out of school time enrichment, they're only for students who can't afford to pay for this, correct?
We do, it is a tuition-based program, so there is a fee associated with it. We do have reduced tuition that we offer for students, and we are also looking at grant opportunities, as well as different free events that we offer to the community throughout the year.
Okay, how would a parent know that these things exist? I'm not seeing anything on the website. I'm not seeing any indication that we have after school enrichment programs for our Title I students. And the other part that's kind of disturbing was the $445,000 revenue that the district retains. I would think that we would try and include more of our low socioeconomic schools in this program instead of trying to make a profit. Maybe we could use that $445,000 in revenue and offer these services, a scholarship program to our underserved community, because they don't have after school programs. But yet the district is pocketing $500,000 is what my concern was.
And we do work with the communications team to make sure that the community is made aware of these opportunities. And in regards to the revenue that is generated, we do also, the Extended Learning Department makes a contribution back into the general fund so that it is going back into the district based on the fees that are generated from these classes.
Okay, and I won't belabor this because it's a long day, but when I look at even the vendors that you chose, those vendors are not offering services that may be, a diversity of services that kids would be interested in. I don't see any, everything I see is like building brains, these labs, STEMs. There's nothing for dance, cheerleading. It's just not a variety of services that's being offered where kids could come in and get in band, music. It's other things that they could do. But I see that the vendors you chose are catering to the more upper income students.
So
that's mhm.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you finish.
Can I interject for just a second? I just wanted to make clear that this afternoon, I emailed the board, and at your tables is the agenda item that we're referring to.
Ms. Williams, one thing.
Just so that you can follow along, it's that one.
Ms. Williams, one thing to add is that these 6 vendors are in addition to already approved vendors, so there are more options available for students and their families than just these 6 we're bringing to the board this evening.
Okay. I understand that you guys have a hard job, and I'm not judging. I just want to see more. And at almost 12:30 in the morning, I'm gonna trust you that we can work this out outside the board. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Dr. Gilliam?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams, for bringing this to our attention. I did not look at this. Can you explain what this is? We didn't have time to read it. We had time, but it was like underneath something.
This is optional after-school enrichment that is offered not every day, which is different from extended learning. These are enrichment opportunities through vendors that Kelly's team works to provide to students at our campuses.
And I'm sorry, Kelly, what is your
This is
title?
Kelly Keegan, our Director of Extended Learning.
Okay, so, and how much does this cost for students in the afternoon?
It varies based on the vendor, but it's a 10-week semester that we offer. And so the classes can range somewhere between maybe $150 and $250 for that semester. But as I stated, we do also have reduced pricing for students that are able to apply to be able to attend these classes.
When we're talking enrichment, it looks like, is this dance and different?
It covers a bunch of different categories, so it can be STEM, it can be art, there's culinary, there's foreign languages, sports, dance, so it's a
So
wide
these,
range.
I'm sorry. So these are the programs that normally parents would pay for anyway and going to tap dance after, and since they're there, they get to.
And they can do them, yep, in the campus after school.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hannon?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize if this was sent to me this afternoon, but if we could just make sure we know if an agenda item comes up, because I think it's important that we have time to look at it. So, and you may have said this, and I'm sorry, because we were frantically up here going, where is this? Where is this? Are these offered on every campus?
Well, that's part of the reason that we're looking to add more vendors, is to continue to expand the program. So this coming fall, we're looking to be at 29 campuses, but by adding more vendors, the goal would be to add more classes and add more campuses and continue to expand the program. But right now, no, it's not at every campus, but that is the goal.
Okay, so we have a handful of campuses that don't have these? Okay, so I do think definitely that for equity, we have to have these everywhere, or we need to, be working with the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or something, so that everybody has opportunity for enrichment. Then on top of that, I'm going to say that it's not an after-school issue, but I do think enrichment programs during the school day are also really, really important for those kids whose parents don't have them in after-school programs, especially at the elementary level. Most of our kids don't have opportunity really for enrichment courses until secondary. And I understand that we have fine arts and PE and such, but I think if we could widen enrichment opportunities, that would be very helpful.
I agree. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Ms. Malone?
But Danetta, it was mainly, I think she's gone, right? Danetta, are you there? Okay. Oh, okay. So I wanted to say thank you for adding more vendors, and this comes from a working mom's point of view. I know that yesterday y'all took kids to the roller skating rink, I've heard.
That was
And a
part of
lot-
our summer program.
Yes, but it was through the extended
Yes, it is
care
through
summer
extended learning.
program. And so this, for anyone watching and for other board members,
Welcome to Zoom. Please press pound, then enter your meeting ID,
Nine, 6, 3, 2, 9, 6, 7, 5, 8, 0.
please enter the meeting passcode, followed by the
live stream dropped, and so we're trying to get back in so that our live stream will be re-engaged.
Back?
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you. So is this a YouTube thing? Well, as long as it's being recorded, you can, I mean, it'll get uploaded to the website, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have it recorded, so if we can continue without streaming.
Mr.
If-
Morris,
yeah.
I mean, the meeting's still being recorded here
Right,
locally, right?
Yes.
That's my understanding.
So
and
we
provided
can-
that it's being recorded, you can
Okay,
continue
so
with the
I
meeting.
think we can go continue, correct? Okay,
Okay.
okay, good. Okay, so if there's no more discussion on 11D1, oh no, I'm sorry, 11C1B, then let's vote.
Mr. Rosenthal, Miss William is, we lost her audio to Miss Williams, so we're trying to get it back.
Okay. And did everybody vote? Me? Well, she's not, there we go. Okay. Can she hear? Ms. Williams, can you hear me? No?
With the call down?
Yeah, you probably can't, unless you put it to the mic and let her.
Yes.
Welcome to Zoom. Please press pound, then enter your meeting ID.
Ms. Williams
followed
is
by the
voting yes,
pound
so the
sign
motion
again.
carries 7-0. We will now move on to consent agenda 11D1.
Mr. President, I move to approve consent agenda item 11D1 as presented.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Dr. Gilliam. Angie, do you have discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. Rosenthal. So this is the item dealing with the building of a new field house at Clements High School. Thank you for answering my questions that I sent in before. My question, I want to follow up and some clarity regarding the facility condition index, and that, do we have our aging campuses where the board could see what the number is on the facility? Condition index, I just know some of our aging buildings, I just get concerned when we, maybe we're using bond money or reallocating bond funds to repair some buildings, and we've got some buildings that feel like we've put enough Band-Aids on them. So if you could just tell me, do we have a list of what the FCI scores are for our older campuses?
Yes, ma'am, we do have that, and we're actually finalizing, updating those, because we did one for Bond 2018, and then we're doing one right as we speak that we're finalizing, so we can provide that information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perez. When could we expect to get that?
Carolina, when do we have those? We're about 2 months out.
About 2 months out, so that puts us into September?
Correct.
And so I'm not sure if we could, put that in the minutes, or I'm not sure how we can follow up, just it's just hard that we if we don't document that somewhere, we kind of lose follow-up on that. Thank you very
We
much.
can put that on the pending list.
We can provide you the ones that we did for 2018.
Oh, that would be.
We have that we can provide.
Okay,
And then
so-
we can provide the, once they get updated.
Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have more discussion? Nope. Seeing none, please vote. Ms. Williams has communicated. Could you put that up to the mic so everybody it can be recorded?
Can you say that one more time?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 7-0. Next, we will move on to action. We have item 12A1.
Mr. President, I move to approve action item 12A1 as presented.
We have a
I second.
Second, we have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Ms. Hannon. Mr. Rice, would you mind going through this? Because this is kind of your deal
Yes,
every year. So.
I'm happy to do that. This is Mr. Tony Hopkins, who is a member of the, I believe it's for the Friendswood School District, and he is running for a position on the TASB Board of Directors in Region 4 for position C. At the time that he sent this in to us, he and others like him attempt to get endorsements from school boards. There are about 40 school districts in Region 4. I don't know if he sent a request to all 40 of them, but he did that because if he were to receive 25% of the 40 districts, which is 10 districts that would recommend him, then he would be placed on the ballot, which the delegate will vote on at the delegate assembly at the TexEd conference in Dallas. But he had to put this in place early on, and since that time has been overcome by events, it just so happens that just recently, last week, the filing period closed and no one had filed to run against him. But no one knew that when this was being prepared, when this board book was being prepared, and certainly he did not know that when he sent this in to us in June. So that is why it is on there, and although it is a foregone conclusion, it would be my recommendation that simply as a show of support for one of our local trustees in our region, who is a former president of the Gulf Coast Area Association of School Boards, which I encourage everyone to participate in, that we, as just a courtesy show of support, vote to support him in this endeavor.
Any other questions? Ms. Malone, you have your card up. Anybody else? No? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Do we need to make a
Williams?
motion?
Yes.
We had a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Ms. Hannon. Oh, was it you that second? Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Whoever I said. Okay. Mrs. Williams is a yes. We're waiting for the, can everybody make sure their button's pushed? There we go. Motion carries 7-0. Item 12A2, consider naming Fort Bend ISD's official and alternate voting delegates for TASB's annual delegate assembly.
Mr. President, I move to approve action item 12A2 as presented.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Ms. Hannon. Do we have discussion? Jim, would you mind
Yes.
explaining the process?
This, at the TexEd conference in Dallas, TASB will hold its annual meeting and conduct business at the delegate assembly. So each school district should nominate a delegate to attend the delegate assembly where they will be voting on various things, including TASB's cornerstone principles, advocacy priorities, resolutions, as well as a slate of director candidates and officer candidates. So about 400 people attend that. We should nominate a person to serve as the delegate and an alternate in case the delegate should fall ill. And that's what it's really for. It's the annual business meeting for TASB conducted at the Delegate Assembly. Happy to answer any questions.
When is that, Mr. Rice?
It's in September. It's the last weekend
23rd,
of
I think.
September.
23rd.
It's a very good experience because of the protocols involved. It's a board meeting. Instead of 7 people, there are 400. So there's certain protocols that have to be followed to make sure it's logical and everybody knows what's going on.
Okay, and just as the TASB president, does that, are you still eligible to be the delegate?
I will be presiding over the meeting.
Oh, okay, so no.
So the answer is no, yes.
Okay.
So we do need a delegate. I'll be happy to nominate someone. Somebody wants to volunteer. Okay. Well, we have a motion on the table, but I believe it needs to be amended. Mr. Morris?
You could probably withdraw that motion by consensus, given that it doesn't
Okay.
include a delegate or alternate within it.
Okay. Well, I will, before I do that, Dr. Gilliam would like to be the delegate. How about who would like to be the alternate? You would? Okay, so with everyone's kind permission, I'll withdraw my original motion by unanimous consent, hopefully,
Yes.
and make a new motion to approve action item 12A2 as presented with a proviso of nominating Dr. Shirley Rose Gilliam to serve as the delegate and Mrs. Angie Hannon to serve as the alternate.
Second. Do we have a discussion? Please vote.
Ms. Williams, can you share your vote with us?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 7-0. And now we are at future review future board meeting agenda items.
Yes, Mr. President, just want to share that obviously the board will have a busy month in August with a number of special called meetings as you all launch into the superintendent search. Our 2 August board meetings have been moved to the last 2 weeks in August. A combination of information items associated with providing the board just an overview of the attendance boundary process. We'll be sharing the summative reports on the DIP and the CIP performance objectives for the past school year. A special programs update as well. And then in September, we'll be providing the summative report for TEA accountability, and some things that are up for the board's consideration will be to adopt the district's strategic plan, performance objectives, the CIP performance objectives, class size waivers, and a number of different action items. Any questions or clarifications?
Nope. No comments, questions? Well, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Spokane
All right,
Nursery.
Ms. Williams, we are.